Hello YouTube, it's me again, Hongkoy. Welcome back for another video. At ngayon, Darkest Secret, Leonor Clay, the old woman who lived with 92 ghosts. Ang dami nun. Narinig ba? Sana hindi narinig. Simulan natin!
My name is Leonor Clay, and this is The Darkest Secret. Today we present The Old Woman Who Lived with 92 Ghosts.
Ang dami nun.
The one who tells us the story is a 42-year-old man. Carlos Jara is his name. He writes to us by email telling us a terrifying scenario. His email is titled The 92 Ghosts of My Nana. He begins by telling us that he was remodeling a house that he had inherited from his grandmother, his Nana. An old and poorly maintained house. Almost the entire vinyl floor was moldy. Several areas of the house had broken boards, so he had a lot to repair, especially since his goal was to sell it. So he decided to start with his grandmother's room, since it was the most deteriorated, with dark patches of mold everywhere. They started pulling out the boards to see how bad the mold was. It turns out that while they were taking out the flooring, the carpenters told him that they had found a locked trunk. It was odd and worn out. He did not have the key, and for that reason, he had to take it to a locksmith. When he was finally able to open it, he found a horrifying surprise. A surprise that today has explained dozens of incidences he experienced as a child. A story that I know will make you shudder. So get comfortable in your seat, and if you're brave, turn off the lights. Carlos wrote us an extensive letter that is not necessary to share with you today. There, he gives us even the smallest of detail on everything. An experience that, according to him, began in his childhood. Therefore, after being consumed by a story, I decided to tell you in the correct order, from what he remembers when he was a child.
Ano nga?
You see, in order to understand the context, it is necessary to go back to the year 1993, when Carlos was 12. It turns out that as a child and part of his youth, he went to his grandmother's house every Saturday. A nice, adorable old woman, a book lover. In fact, he remembers that the house had dozens of shelves full of old books, more than half of which he had no idea what they were about. A kind lady who from time to time would go into a sour and unpleasant state of mind for no apparent reason. That is what Carlos remembers most about her. In spite of everything, he liked that house because it was big. It had 2 living rooms and many other rooms. He also tells us that as a child, he loved to play hide and seek along these old hallways. However, there were a couple of times that strange things happened to him in that house. I know that this has also happened to you, having a deep memory of something strange that you experienced and that you never forgot. You see, he described in great detail all the things he experienced while he stayed in that house. But here I will leave you the most interesting ones. He tells me that he doesn't know if he really lived them like that, or if his mind has changed them. He asks himself this question because the things he experienced are extremely horrifying. On one occasion, he was sleeping in one of the two guest rooms and woke up to go to the bathroom. On the way there, he began to hear some noises.
Kala ko yun na yun eh.
The corridor where he was located led directly to the dining room. There was no light to turn on. He just stood there, paralyzed, saying that he remembers the sound of moving chairs, as if someone was relocating them and opening cabinets. He assumed it was a thief. Terror took over him, and he did nothing but take refuge in the bathroom. The next morning, he discussed this with his grandparents, but even though they checked, everything was in place. Nothing looked like a thief had broken in, nor was it anyone present at the house at that moment. To this day, he remembers that event and assures that it was real. But he is not sure if everything happened as he remembers, since things were moving aggressively. He also remembers when he was 15, when he was in the kitchen and saw the reflection of something strange in his teacup while at a family gathering. It was like a dark reflected shadow standing right in the doorway behind him. Also, during that time, he tells us that he had spent a week on vacation there with his cousins. They played and had fun, but on one occasion while he was running through one of the corridors, he began to smell something similar to a bum. That typical smell of someone who hasn't bathed in weeks and leaves a trace of aroma in the place where they passed by. That same odor was emitted there, and since they were playing hide and seek, Carlos thought it would be a good way to find the one that hadn't bathed, following its disgusting trail. Therefore, he was going to follow the aroma that was very strong. But he was led to the bathroom on the first floor, and there, once he opened the curtain to see if someone was hiding in the bathtub, he felt that someone tugged at him by the shirt. It was sudden, brief, but very intense. So much so that he ended up with the nails marked on his torso. But when he turned around, no one was there. He is sure that it is impossible for any of his cousins to have escaped and disappeared so quickly. He says that he had taken a photo of the marks left on his torso from that grip, but he does not remember where they are. The most curious thing was that later his cousins assured him that absolutely none of them had hidden in the bathroom. Then he told me about the other 15 different experiences he had. But the last odd thing he lived through in that house was on one of his last visits at the age of 17.
Bakit?
He spent the night there because they celebrated a new year.
Okay.
He woke up at dawn because he started to feel someone's leg in the bed. It is something normal when you sleep with someone else. Someone else's leg under the sheets. He accidentally kicked that leg, and that made him wake up. He felt it with his foot, its bony heel, and it was indeed an adult leg. He doesn't know if it was a man's or a woman's, since it was very wide and large. It couldn't be any of his cousins, and that was the only possibility, because adults never slept in the rooms with them. When he turned to see who was sleeping next to him, could you believe it? Indeed, no one was there.
Kala ko naman. Kasi ang galing mambitin. Dinaig pa ako.
The next morning when he told the story, the family took it as a joke. His cousins assured that they had also experienced strange things, but it all remained as a simple anecdote. After that age, he no longer stayed in that house, not out of fear, because his cousins grew up. They went out with friends, with their partners, and it was getting boring. The times he went to that house afterwards were sporadic, to say hello, but he never stayed there for more than a couple of hours, except for a cousin's birthday or something specific. It was very infrequent, and then nothing else happened. When his grandmother passed away 5 years ago, he was 37. Carlos was surprised because she left him the house as an inheritance. Among his 8 cousins, she chose him, and until now, he doesn't know why. The house was old, poorly maintained, and it smelled. Therefore, he decided to remodel it a bit to sell it. Now we come to what I told you in the intro. The moldy floorboards and that trunk that lay open in front of him. Since he didn't know what it contained, he decided to wait until he got home to open it. Inside were letters, newspapers, and various notes. The truly horrifying thing was all those photos. Photos and more photos. Like this.
Ine-excite ako doon sa photos, ha. Ano yan? Wala ko nakikita. Sabihin niyo, comment nyo nga dyan kung may nakikita kayo.
Do you notice anything in them?
Parang may nakita akong muka. Ay, muka. Ayun, no? Yung maputi. Ayun sa dulo, may itim. Ngayon, nakikita ko na. Ay, hindi pala. Ayun pala sa may library.
When he showed them to his mother, she told him something that his grandmother Carmen had taken to her grave. You see, when he sees the photos of the old version of the house, they brought back memories immediately. Because, of course, this house changed its look and architecture many times during Carmen's life there. It was then that Carlos's mother told him something that made his blood run cold.
Parang conjuring yun, ah. Sino yun yung itim? Kay Ellen ba yun?
She told him that when she was little, her mother Carmen would have gatherings with a group of friends. They smoked and read in different rooms of this huge house. Back then, she believed that her mother had some kind of book club. At least that's what she told her. However, Carlos's mother remembers that she spent much of her childhood at her aunt's house, since Carmen met with her friends at least twice a week, and she could not be present. She never explained why her daughter had to go, but she would anyway. Sometimes she had to spend weeks at her aunt's house without receiving a single call from her mom. This happened when Carlos's mother was between 9 and 14 years old, so she remembers it very well. She recalls the wax of the candles stuck to the cold ceramic floor. Sometimes she found used candles on shelves and on all kinds of furniture.
Yeah, malupit!
They are for praying, said Carmen. But now that her daughter sees these photos, she fervently believes that the reason was something else. They spent all that afternoon reading the letters that were inside the trunk. Some of them were indeed letters, but there were other papers that described 92 people who are called remnants.
Search natin yan, remnants.
The tall woman, said one of those papers. The tall woman is a periodic remnant, disproportionate being that usually appears with long legs. The priest, a rare remnant. He's a being with a blurry face, bald, and wears monk-like clothes from the 1400s.
Oh, di ba? Rare ang mga kalbo.
The Thing, very rare remnant.
Nakakatakot. Ayoko niyan.
The Thing is an amorphous being, not a person. Sometimes it appears with limbs, and sometimes it doesn't. It usually disappears with the photos. And so on. Carlos tells us that each one of those 92 spectra has a complete description, not only of appearance, but also of the behavior they had in each of these sessions. Something quite shocking to reflect on while you see these images.
Tunay nga.
Carlos said he spent 2 days putting the photos together with their descriptions to try to make a correlation. Apparently, there aren't photos of all 92, but there is of a large amount of them. What is going on here? What was the grandmother doing in those sessions with her friends? Carlos tells us that he believes, as much as it hurts him, that his grandmother was a witch.
Whoa!
A real witch. That nice and smiling face kept unimaginable horrors underneath.
O baka may mga real witch dyan, umamin na kayo. Naisahan ako dun
Our subscriber also tells me that he feels extremely terrified since he believes that all the things he experienced as a child can be associated with one of these photos, that the leg he felt in bed that night could belong to one of these specters, and that thought makes his every hair stand on end. That time something hurt him while playing hide and seek, it was also one of these beings. His mother told him that once, when he was about 11 years old, he had a sleepover in her house.
Yan ang Ma'am Remy, anong sa tingin niyo yan? Multo ba talaga yan? Parang kalbo.
The grandmother was the only one there with them, and at one moment, she sat them all in a circle. It was night, and she sat them all in this very place. And singing, she began to throw dry herbs on top of them. Sure, they thought she was playing, but who knows what she was really doing. Carlos also remembers that his grandmother was insistent that he and his cousins visit her, that she almost begged their parents to bring them. And now that he thinks about it, he suspects that it was for something related to these terrifying things. This is without a doubt the most lurid and spectacular case that I have seen in a long time. What do you think of this case? Would you like to know the description of each of these beings? I was going to incorporate them in this video, but it was too long. Express your thoughts in the comment box if you would like me to make a second video clearly covering the description of those specters and the other experiences that Carlos told me about. Has something like this happened to you in your life? If you have any interesting paranormal story that you would like for me to know, email me, but don't forget to attach the evidence. It is with only audiovisual material that I can put together this type of video. Tell me what you thought of this case, because this video has already come to an end. My name is Leonor Clay, and this was The Darkest Secret.
So don't forget to subscribe, Darkest Secret. May pabura-bura ka pa dyan, Bustilos. Ano yung message mo dyan? Picture pa lang. Ayawan, nakakatakot si Lola. Mangkukulam. Don't forget to subscribe, Darkest Secret. Nasabi ko na, diba? Nasabi ko na. Ano yan? Ay,